one of the other things I subjected to AI recently, I published this book. It's called The School Leavers Party. Some of you may have seen it there. And I wanted to understand, because it's the first time I'm doing a book of this nature, I wanted to understand from AI itself how the world would perceive the book. And when I was doing that, I realized that AI actually does not understand our African way of doing things, which is what we call Ubuntu. And I joked, I played around with the AI system. We sparred, we were kind of wrestling with the AI system itself. I was asking questions, pushing in one direction or the other. And I realized that AI thought that Ubuntu is socialism. So at some point I asked AI, do you understand? Sorry, it thought that our African way of doing things is socialism. So I asked AI, do you understand Ubuntu? Yeah, then I think something clicked. I think from all its archives, that much data that is trained on, something clicked, and it started realizing that actually what I was talking about was something different. And I sparred with AI for quite a bit. Sometimes we spar until it admits that the things that I'm saying are actually what it ought to be, not what it thinks. So I decided to post. The only person I knew who understood or who thought about Ubuntu was Dr. Kinyanjui. So I posted on Facebook what the results were coming out with this sparring. And I tagged Njeri. That was last year. Oh, she told me, no, I'm having a symposium next year. Why don't you come and talk about AI and Ubuntu? And that's why you find me today here talking about this topic called AI and Ubuntu. So I have a screen, I don't know, and I'm sharing this screen. I hope the technical team can project what I'm sharing. So one thing I have to say that I'm really humbled to give this presentation. I'm even happy because I'm told I'm going to be having quite a bit of time. And the reason why I'm humbled is maybe a little bit different from what other speakers may have done when they came over onto the podium. Like I said, I've known Njeri since 1989 in January, when she came to Cambridge and found...
Just a minute. Technical people, we can't see the slides very well. Can we see those slides well?
Yep. So,
continue, Dr.
Yeah, so I'm saying that I'm really humbled because I've known Njeri for a long time. And I think many people here may not understand why this is a big celebration. And those who actually do may not be courageous enough to say it. It's all about the journey Njeri has gone through to get to where she is. So like I was saying, I met Njeri in January of 1989. I'd spent one term at Cambridge when she joined us there. And within that term, I'd learned a lot. Apart from knowing how to live in a wintry country, I had learned quite a bit about issues to do, let's call it racism, because that's what it is. Because the system that exists, or existed, I don't know, I'm sure it exists to some extent, to a large extent, not even to some extent. The system that existed then had, of course, ranked. You know, it is a hierarchical system. It's like a caste system, where we have people who have ranked themselves quite high up there, mainly from the shade of your color, the color of your skin, and for us Africans who are ranked somewhere down at the bottom. And it was a system that used to practice racism in a very subtle way. Then nobody will ever tell you anything that would be constituted or interpreted to be racist. But you knew because it would exclude you. Like you walk into a bus, you sit in a bus, then everybody next to you wakes up and leaves from that seat. In fact, we got to learn that because they didn't want to sit with us, anytime you got into a bus, then you had the whole seat to yourself and you spread your bags there. But of course it's bad because you feel like, is there something wrong with me? Because I'm of this color. Of course, we learned to take advantage, and we took it a little bit further. In fact, there's a friend of mine who would take up a seat for the disabled, and when the driver comes and tells her to move out, she says, no, I'm disabled, I'm black. Because after all, that's what you tell us, you make us feel. So when Njeri came, we had learned a bit of those lessons, and as Kenyans, we had learned to stick together, to live with each other, because that's the only part you felt like you are a full human being, and you felt that people understood and appreciated what you are. So I think Njeri got it rough when she came the first time, because I remember there's a time she was walking about, around maybe going about her business in the streets, maybe coming from a lecture. And some young white boys would come and spray water on her. And that was the kind of introduction she got to the system. So the system was designed to actually break your spirit. And when you did that, then you'd, of course, join the queue, become like them. And then they put you at the back of the queue. So you are there at their beck and call. So when we came back to Nairobi, came to the University of Nairobi, we realized that actually some of those systems were kind of interrelated, they were interconnected. And many years later, of course, you'd see that really, actually, these guys set up the same universities. There's no place Kenyans had sat and decided what kind of universities they wanted. So somebody did those universities for a purpose. So they told us that now you are an educated person. Yes, we were, no doubt. And they told us that your work is to solve universal problems. And what they didn't tell us, there's nothing like universal problems. All problems are local. So when they're telling us to solve universal problems, in essence, they're telling us, you'll be solving these problems we have defined as universal, and by so doing, you're actually solving their problems. You will continue being a source of their labor. And in fact, if you recall, the University of Nairobi at that time was often referred to as an ivory tower, which means that it was totally isolated from what was going on with the rest of the Kenyan society. So we essentially got into the ivory tower. And a few people, like Njeri, decided that the whole essence of doing research, of being educated, is to serve those people actually who brought you up, who sacrificed so much so that you became what you are. So those who decided to continue living in the ivory tower, solving universal problems. And for them, the system was such that you solve the path to progress, the path to promotion, was solving these universal problems. So we continue, for many of them, and even today, some of them continue living a lie. As I have no qualm about saying that. But Njeri was truthful to who she was. She knew that the problems we needed to solve, all problems are local. There's nothing universal. Even those ones that have put people on the moon, they have done so because they solved local problems, developed local materials, systems, and were able to put people up there. But the system, of course, did not take that lying down. So what really happened was it has to fight back. So you are given a path. Either you do this, solve the so-called universal problems, get your promotion, or you continue solving the local problems, and then you are disenfranchised. And I think Njeri and many others went to do the same. And you had to make a choice. It was a personal choice. Do you continue solving the problems that are real? Or do you continue solving the universal problems and get your promotion? So in the end, of course, those who decided to solve the real problems found themselves cast aside. And for Njeri, I know after many years, she left the university. Things like promotions, you would only see them on what we call view SASA, you know. And at that point, the ivory tower, in fact, I normally laugh when I see that the University of Nairobi has done a big tower. It's as if it's mocking itself, like it's actually trying to say those who called it the ivory tower actually were kind of right. So the system itself thought they had triumphed over people like Njeri and others. But of course now we know that did not happen because that's why we are here celebrating. So what happened is Njeri found her voice. She's published all these books that we are celebrating. And now she can actually reach and can be celebrated not just in Kenya, even in other places. By having solved local problems, she's being celebrated universally. And that's what I am saying, that there's nothing like universal problems, it's local problems. But because we are human beings and we are all subjected to the same desires, then when you solve those local problems, they become identified elsewhere because other people identify themselves in the same way. So the system, I won't call the system, that Njeri had been put down, must ask itself now, we thought this was over, and what is really happening? So that is why I feel this celebration is perhaps bigger than what many people may have thought. I was really happy the other day when I saw her giving a lecture at the University of Nairobi. And I also wondered whether those people understood really what transformations or what processes had gone through and why we had ended up where we ended up. So that's why I feel very humbled to be here celebrating with you this achievement by Njeri. Njeri, I've always considered her to be my older sister. And it's because she's very genuine about what needs to be done. There are not many people like that, because given a choice, many people are being asked, it's like the money and the box choice. Do you want to do what is real and don't get the benefit? Or do you want to do what is carved out for the system, and then you get your benefits? So she has chosen to remain true, and that is why for all this time, I've always actually kind of maintained this strong relationship. I've really not bothered so much about the merits or demerits and the details of our work. What I've bothered about is that she's passionate and genuine about what she's trying to do. So for me, that has been very important. And when I started interacting this Ubuntu, and I realized she's the one that perhaps understood this concept among some of my friends, that's why I decided to discuss those things, and that's why I find myself here. So the next thing is, I have to say that recently there's an urgency in this world because there's an enormous power in the form of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is not new in this world. It has been there for quite a long time, but it has reached a point, and this is owing to development of technology, where it's become very powerful and gotten into very many aspects of our lives. Like I said, I'm an avid user of AI, and today I can tell you, where I used to employ people to do coding, for example, I just use AIs, and I'm able to do a lot of things in a very short time with AI. But I'm not the only one, and I'm sure there are so many people. And for us, we are doing good things. Bad people are there, so you can imagine what they can do with the AI. Secondly, the same systems we talk about.
customer
Yep. So secondly, the same systems we are talking about, by and large, are the ones responsible for this development of AI. I don't mean to say they all mean bad, but you can imagine if they were able to control and subject us to what we have gone through as African people, what can they do now when they have this big, powerful tool at their disposal? Those are the questions that we must ask ourselves. So my task is to hold those two things together. The ancient philosophy of Ubuntu, Ubuntu predates even socialism and all those communism and feudalism, because it's a philosophy upon which our African system was set up, and we now know that Africans preceded everybody else in this world. And then the case of AI, which largely, as I'm going to discuss here, has been done without the African input. So the question at the heart of this address is, can AI carry Utu? Because if it did, then we would embrace it exactly as it is. And if it does not carry Utu, what must we do about it? So I'm going to explore 8 movements of thought. The Ubuntu itself, try to define it the way we understand it. I will ask our question, does AI have a soul? And this is another question which is very exciting, because every soul, when I was preparing this presentation, again, this is one of the sparring that I did with the AI itself to ask that question. And you can also ask ChatGPT, Claude, and Google Gemini, and all the others, and you feel the resistance. But and in fact, they do not like that question. But we are going to explore that in any case. We know, and from a lot of scholarship, that AI is trained on what we call the weird knowledge. We'll explore that. Then we look at the linguistic aspect of AI. Most of AI is based on English, and that is really one of the major elements of exclusion in the AI systems, because language carries thought, language carries culture, and when your language, there are many things in your language which we are lucky as Africans because we speak many languages, because those carry so much knowledge. So I'll look at the linguistic aspect. I'll look at, like what I mentioned, AI misunderstands Utu, it calls it socialism. And we'll try to explore efforts even from my own self and from others of how we can build an AI.
Dr.
Yes?
How many more minutes should I give you?
I don't know.
Because you are handling a very important topic, I would also want us to give some grounds so that people can engage. Because you're asking very difficult questions. Does AI have a soul? Does it have an African Utu? So continue.
So, okay, thank you. These are just questions. They may not be very valid, but let's think about them. I'm going to pretend here that I have the real answers. But there are these questions that I put out there for you to discuss. And even I myself, in the long run, I'll learn from the answers that you'll be able to provide. So ultimately, I'll look at a call to action. What do we need to do given all this? So what is Ubuntu? Yeah, we have learned from Njeri that she has described it, that it's the bedrock of the Africa's market economy. And Utu is defined as humanness. It's a Swahili word, and I hope you can see that, but I'll read. The state of being a full, dignified, relationally embedded human person. That's what Swahili, that's what it means in Swahili. The state of being a full, dignified, relational, embedded human person. What all of us would desire to be. In Kikuyu, or Gikoyo, Utu, we call it umodo, which means the essence of being human being. You know, if you heard, and this is a term you hear so often, I know some of you may not be Kikuyus, somebody says, oyo dale umodo, this one does not have utu or umodo. It means that what they are saying is that they can see you as a biological entity, but what you are is not complete to describe you as a full human being. So it is very important, at least from where I come from, that essence, or you radiate that essence that makes you a human being. And it means that it's not just sufficient to be biologically definable as having all the features of a human being. You must radiate that humanness for you to fully qualify to be a human being. In the Bantu languages, Ubuntu expresses the same idea with added emphasis on solidarity. Umuntu, Gumuntu, Gabantu, a person is a person through others. This is the relational aspect of Utu. These are the foundations of an entire moral economic system, that is the Utu and Ubuntu, as documented by Dr. Kinyanjui in African markets and the Utu Ubuntu business model. So when you are able to get a copy of our book, you'll be able to read and understand what Dr. Njeri has projected as the bedrock of the Utu Ubuntu. So traders who are once dismissed as hawkers by colonial law and lumped into the informal sector by the World Bank were practicing a coherent, sophisticated, humanistic economy. That's what Njeri tells us. So in as much as we see a human being, we define a human being not from the biological aspect, but the way they project the humanness. The market economy itself must also be projected to also radiate humanness in itself. It is not just sufficient that you sell. It's important that you have that humanness as you conduct your business. So the 6 core principles of Utu Ubuntu is interconnectedness, solidarity, and communality. So interconnectedness means that no person is an island. And it's like, and I think for us Africans, we understand this. There's no time you go to sleep or you walk around and you feel you are alone. You know the other person has a bearing in your life. And you know, for us it's so natural that we never think that other people can think differently. So if we live in a Western society, then for them, interconnectedness is not important. And this was actually described or brought out by John Beatty in his book. I think there's a lot of literature that brings out some of these aspects. In fact, one day I was talking to a friend of mine from the West, somebody from England, a good friend of mine, and she told me that she knows nobody cares about her, therefore she doesn't care about anybody. And I thought that was very strange because that is not the way we think as Africans. Solidarity and communality. The market is a community of mutual responsibility. Traders share space. This is what we are learning from Njeri's work. Transport costs and risk. Reciprocity, giving and receiving sustain the community. Success is measured by how one trains others and contributes to the collective life. I think these are things that you know. For you, they are so natural, but other people may not be thinking that way. And in fact, why they sound trivial is because it's very hard for you to imagine that this is not how other people actually think and behave. Economic justice. So in the market, everything is open. Everybody has an equal opportunity to do their business. And there's fairness. In fact, there's a quote here, "Molemi daunaguo guoko." It's like you have to be fair to the farmer who actually brings the products. Not the kind of exploitation that we see nowadays on farmers. And I believe that is why even our output in agriculture sometimes it tends to be very low. The divine dimension. Traders pray together before market opens. We even prayed here, so you know we are practicing the same. Work is embedded in divine blessing and communal accountability. Resilience, these are the principles for Ubuntu. For over a century, the colonial government sought to destroy these markets, but they survived because the philosophy held. There was no alternative. There's nothing else that we could have gotten into that would have sustained us, our lives or our livelihoods. So, yeah, in this book, The School Leavers Party, I've written this book and brought out quite a lot of issues, deep issues for discussion. But I've based it on a very small, deceptively simple problem. When we were in Standard 7, I think we have had changes of education system. That was our last school in year in primary school. We had to raise 1 shilling, a lot of money then, for a school, a young boy, and then to actually conduct a farewell party. Of course, my father was a devout Christian, and they had been told dancing, those kind of things were actually forbidden. So I had to devise a plan. I had to join other people, other schoolboys, and we go to the coffee picking. But when we got there, I didn't realize that actually these people who were veteran pickers, they knew that you had to carry githeri, you had to carry some food. And when I went there, I didn't carry anything. I just carried the sack for harvesting the coffee. By lunchtime, I was hungry. I didn't have food. The coffee, the chemicals from the coffee bushes were making me nauseated. Now, I couldn't go home because I had to wait for everybody else. But what happened is the people I was with, some of them who are my classmates, they shared whatever food they had. But at the end of the day, when we had to present what everybody had picked, I hadn't filled I think I got 3/4 of a debe. But surprisingly, they all shared a little bit of coffee sherries, and my debe was full, so I was able at least to earn the 50 cents. I didn't go home empty-handed. What saved me was not individual enterprise, it was solidarity. So in our system, then and even now, this solidarity has always been practiced. So they continued their own cherries. They lost their own money because it would add them more money, so that I could earn my 50 cents. So Ubuntu did not live only in the philosophical textbooks. It lived in that track that we took when we went to pick the coffee cherries. On that farm where we picked the cherries, and in those shared handfuls of maize and beans, the githeri they shared with me. So I was like them. So at the end of the day, we are okay. So I think when you read this book, it's not just about that story, but I hope you'll be able to get a copy of it, because I've gone deep to project how life was and why some of these things are the way they are. So I think for very many people, when we look at those juakaris, the small markets, we just think people are just surviving, but it is not true. Dr. Kinyanjui has surveyed 674 traders, 604 traders and artisans, and 80% of them felt personally responsible for maintaining harmony in the market community. And over 90% of them actually are flourishing. They have gone to set up bigger businesses. So we should not belittle these, what we call the informal markets. Just say people are just surviving. No, they actually mean more, and they can get you very far. In any case, even the small businesses that we do, we always call them juakaris. And yet some of them end up becoming big businesses. So now we come to the question that I talked about earlier. Does AI have a soul? AI is presented as neutral, but in essence it has a soul. Because what happens is that AI is trained on, and we are going to talk about this. AI is built by people funded by corporations with interests and trained on data created by people with worldviews and deployed in contexts shaped by power. What we mean by this is that The people who build AIs have a purpose. They are not just doing it just because, I don't know, it's like a hobby. No, no, no. These are people who are projecting big businesses. They are also projecting their power and control. So it's not like AI is neutral. In fact, AI is very clever, and sometimes I'm sure some of you use AI. Always, like, use ChatGPT at the end, it says, oh, this is very, very good, but I can improve it in this kind of way. In fact, ChatGPT is so polite, it never even tells you that you are wrong. It brings it very politely, but at the end it tells you, oh, I can improve it this. That improvement, it keeps you, is actually first of all trying to take you into the way of thinking, and also earning from you, because the more you continue using it, of course, you learn low on tokens, and you have to pay a little bit more. So they are not just neutral. When you ask a large language model a question, you receive a response filtered through accumulated choice of its engineers. It's not neutral. The data that you get is based on what was actually put there by the engineers, and they chose it for some reason. The shareholders who are trying to maximize profit, even when they are told how to develop it, they must be told, well, of course, you are at work, you are employed. You also have to tell us how we gain or make money out of these things. We cannot have an honest conversation about AI and Africa unless we first dispense with the fiction of neutrality. And I think this will come out a little bit more as we continue with this discussion. So the evidence is there in the scholarly works. A study in 2025 found that AI models tend to reflect the political ideologies of their creators. These are things that are already out there. I think I'm going to give this presentation for those who may want to look at certain aspects of it. MIT, Sloan, language shapes output, that we know, and we talk about it. Springer scholars describe AI performing ideological functions, normalizing hierarchies. So the studies are out there. These are not just my own observations. There are studies that you can pick that you actually confirm or bring out this kind of the same similar sentiments. You know, AI is mainly it's mainly concentrated in hard for Western technology companies. I think you know that. China is coming up. Europe has a few companies coming in now. France, I think. But you can see that a lot of money is being put into it. Billions, hundreds of billions of dollars. Monies which, as Africans, we cannot even imagine. You know, we are still grappling with. Even $1 billion is a lot of money for us. When you do a $1 billion project, for us as Africans, is a very big project. But here we are talking of hundreds of billions of dollars being put into the AI. We know that Microsoft invested $14 billion in OpenAI. Amazon has invested in Anthropic, $8 billion. Google's commitment to AI and cloud computing, in 2 years, $100 billion. These are big monies. So, and you think these big monies are being put there for you as Africans? Yes, only in a way to actually subject you to what the systems want you to do. AI is trained in what we call the weird knowledge, and weird means Western, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic. And I don't think you need to be told that, because, you know, AI is developed by training on large data that is available, and mainly from the internet and from all over. But how much of that data is African? Most of that data is actually in the Western world. It's based on people who are educated, because they are the ones who put data into the internet. Industrialized, you know, this you don't need to be taught. And the narrow slice of humanity behind most of the psychological research underpinning AI and cognitive science is actually based on that type of training. So a landmark's 2010 study found that up to 95% of research participants came from societies representing only 12% of the global population. So you can divide one by the other. 95 divided by 12.12, almost 10 times. So that's what the power these 12% of the people gain, because they are the ones who hold those systems. So we had populations, and these are Western society populations. They are the societies that don't understand Ubuntu. They are highly individualistic, analytically oriented, and attribute outcome to individual traits rather than relational context, like in Ubuntu. So, and this lands deep. Even multilingual LLMs continue to behave weirdly, because, and we look at this when we look at the language. There are some large language models that are not strictly using English. Then we have collected data from elsewhere. But for some reason, they normalize that data and translate it into, they either normalize or translate it. And normalization means actually it's like almost making it behave like, it's like looking at it in the lens of the English, the weird way of looking at things. AI is not, so let me talk about, let me skip a few things, because time is not, don't have much of time. In Africa, we have 2,000 languages, and in fact, only 42 of those have meaningful support in AI, existing AI. African languages, many of them don't even have an alphabet. So how could they have even harnessed data to actually put into the AI system? There's no written material, there's nothing. So of Hausa sentences, ChatGPT recognizes a language spoken by 94 million people, 10 to 20%. So of Hausa sentences, for example, one of the languages that, and Hausa is a big language, ChatGPT only recognizes 10 to 20% of that language. You can imagine what happens to the other languages. So basically you can see there's a blackout, it's like the African languages, and the languages are the ones what carries knowledge. Most of the things that you say, most names of trees, sayings, even the names of people, they are all carried in your language. So if your language is not there, then all that knowledge is not carried into the AI. So a lot of data is lost in translation because they try to, when you translate, you lose a lot of meaning and you try to flatten. I'm not going to go into the details because of time. The other thing that I need to talk about is our own effort in terms of, I think, our own contribution. We have developed a Kenyan English database, try to define our own language. And we know that with this kind of database, we are able to also to project quite a bit of information into eventually, because that's the language that we use, that's the language I'm talking. We hope in the long run it can actually project a bit of thinking into the AI system without going through a lot of translations. And this database says our language exists, our voice has structure, our people deserve to be served by technology in the way they actually communicate. So instead of, even the way we communicate in English itself is very different from, let's say, the way a Western person will project their own language. So I think I mentioned that AI misunderstands Ubuntu, it calls it socialism, which is not true. If you ask about Shama, it will likely describe it very different from the way we understand Shama itself. Ask it about informal trading, it will flag informality as risk. It will just show all the things that would not work about it. But Ubuntu is not socialism. It predates European left by a millennia. It does not abolish private ownership. So, I think all the long things, especially when it comes to politics, when they don't want something to be seen there, they say many negative things about it. But it's better I like that from the beginning we correct that Ubuntu is not socialism. And anybody saying that, you see somebody who is hitting on us in terms of the way we do our own things. Yeah, there is a quote that I heard Margaret Thatcher say when we were in the UK, and she kept on saying it. She said there is no such a thing as society. There are individual men and women and their families. And this now became really the cornerstone of the neoliberal economies that you see today. It's like you have to act by yourself, other people do not exist. But with time, of course, we have seen even IMF, another bodies, they have begun to warm up towards Ubuntu, families, societies. So many years later, the evidence is in, and we can see that we cannot say Margaret Thatcher was right. So I think, and it's not Margaret Thatcher per se, it is those systems that came up as a result of that thinking. So it's time now that we started thinking of the world, not just ourselves. By the way, when we talk about our African way of thinking, we are not saying that we should just confine ourselves to Africa. I think we believe even other societies can benefit if they were to adopt the Ubuntu way of thinking. And also, even to do whatever they do, they actually give it a touch of humanness. One of the most important things that we see the Ubuntu system is the monetary system. You know, in the Western type of monetary system, money is created as a debt. Somebody sits in a bank, looks at the books and creates a loan and gives you that money as debt. And it is loaned to somebody. So one person creates money and loans to everybody. In our African way of thinking, in the Ubuntu way, we all belong to a shama. Everybody contributes money, and we loan to, everybody is loaned money in a cyclic form. So in the Ubuntu, in the Western way, you start with a loan. In our Ubuntu way, everybody is a lender, and everybody gets their money. So we don't, and you know the problems of debt, because when you are actually subjected to debt, you lose sovereignty because you have to bring the money back, and therefore you are at the mercy of that person, so that you are able to get some work, you are able to get some way of doing this so that you recover the money and give it back. So in the African way of doing this, the Ubuntu way, everything is shared, everything goes cyclical, so you don't lose. Even as a country, when you are subjected to huge debt, definitely you lose sovereignty. You are at the mercy of the lender. And some of these principles are the ones that we need now to start seeing coming into even our monetary system, so that they all become sustainable and they serve human beings better, for that matter.
Doc, I want you to conclude.
So I think time is gone, so I'm not going to continue. At some point I have to stop. So AI as contribute does not have humanness, for it was not factored in its conception and development. If it was not factored, where would it have got it from, unless by chance? But we know it was not. It does not have Utu. What it is a pattern matching at enormous scale. So let me go to maybe the last slide, a call to action. For researchers, what do we need to do? And here I've borrowed Dr. Kinyanjui's example, and I've said that we need to go into the market, listen, document. Oral traditions and solidarity structures are national treasure. We document all these. And potential training, we correct potential training data for putting into the AI, so that AI finally understands African economic life, so that we ensure that it contains African knowledge. So we collect data, we listen. Some of those are oral, so we are able to project them, and we do it ourselves because we are the people who understand. To technologists like us, we build in African languages, AI in African languages, or bring into AI knowledge based on African languages, Kikuyu, the Luo, Kalenjin, Kaba, and all the other, not just the Kenyan languages, but the whole of Africa, and not just Swahili for that matter. So for policymakers, we mandate African languages representation in AI system. The policies are important, maybe at Africa Union level. We need to start demanding that these AIs that are being used, they have to have sufficient content. They have to be trained on sufficient content of the African data. And to this community, we have to honor Dr. Kinyanjui's legacy by refusing to separate the economic from the human. You know, we are saying that the economy cannot just be that you just go make money. It has to have a human angle to it. Thatcher said there was no such a thing as society, that 80 years later, today as we speak, we believe she was wrong. So in closing, the song by Dr. Kinyanjui quotes in her book, it's about, if I remember well, Moshivi wa Marigiti, the market build. It speaks of endurance, tightening up when times are hard, of solidarity with those who struggle alongside you. It has sailed for generations as we enter the age of AI. Our task is to ensure that the market build is not replaced by a silicon chain.